Did you want to talk tonight? Do you have something?
No, I have a couple of questions, but it's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, at 7 o'clock, we'll go ahead and call to order the Wednesday, June 7th, regular scheduled meeting of the Weld 5-Day Board of Education to order. If you would please take a moment to silence any cell phones and or pagers. Rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jessica, would you please call roll?
Monica Johnson is excused. Amanda Proctor is excused. Jeremy Scott?
Here.
Nate Fasano?
Here.
Michael Whale?
Here. We do need to approve the agenda for this evening.
Move we approve as presented. Second.
Reverend Scott, a second by Vice President Sassano to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We do have an agenda. Do we have citizen comments on the items?
She is checking right now.
We don't have anything to find out.
Okay. We'll move on to staff and student celebrations and recognitions.
Well, the celebration tonight is for the class 2023. How many graduates did we have?
Apparently 226 just discovered.
226 graduating seniors. And it was a wonderful celebration. And so proud of all these students. A wonderful class that showed service, humility, competitiveness, and joy. It was just a pleasure to be at graduation.
So, yeah, everything you just said, but one thing that kept sticking in my mind was the kids, like in previous years, there's always been like, I don't know, 10% of the kids are kind of nervous about, they don't want to be on stage, they're freaked out, there's 15 people they've never met before, with their hands out, and shake them, and but every single kid that came across the stage this year was like just lit up, excited, very engaging, and this was, I gotta be careful how I say this, right?
Mhm.
This is one of my favorite years. I'll tell you. Out of like 6 of them.
I think you say
The
that.
6 favorites I've had.
Yeah, I was really impressed, and I can't remember whose address it was that, and I hadn't quite put it together in my head. They said something about it. This really was the class that took the full brunt of COVID in their high school career. I mean, they were, they started with, it was freshmen, getting sent home, and then had to deal with, they dealt with every piece of that thing in high school, and I think they did an amazing job, and they came through it, and that was a strong class, and yeah, I was inspired, honestly. And I got to hug my son for longer than he wanted me to. He was literally in my ears like, Dad, this is too long. People behind me, I'm like, nobody's gonna tell me to stop, son.
Yeah, graduation's always a lot of fun. The weather held out for us. I know there was a lot of concern about that. That was great. And it is 226 students, which is, I think, the biggest class that Roosevelt has ever had. And your class will continue to be the largest class that Roosevelt has ever had for quite some time. I know our daughter's class has 300 and something, 325 kids in it.
24, 25 or 24.
Depends on how you.
We'll see how summer school goes.
But having this class be the ones that kind of closed out Roosevelt High School, I think was pretty special. Not only talk about COVID and I think all of their addresses, but they talked about the state football championship, the basketball state championship, the dance team state championships. So they were all very proud, and they were very respectful and engaged. It was a great group of kids. So I also had the opportunity to attend several of their graduation parties, which was even more fun. Just very respectful group that was I'm excited to see go out world. They will be good representatives of Roosevelt High School.
That concludes our student celebrations for this month, or this meeting.
Okay, we'll move on to reports from board members.
I can just quick.
Sure.
speaking of closing out Roosevelt High School, barbecue days, they had the cast walkthrough of Roosevelt High School. Was able to go to breakfast there with the firemen. It was great to see the community come together and kind of send that building off well. So that was really exciting. I've been talking a little bit about the Pioneer Ridge Playground and how we're hoping to find funding for that. We're still working on that. I'm going to reach out to the town of Johnstown and see if there's any opportunities there this week. And then we've got a couple of grants that we're going to apply for. So we can add to that grant fund we're going to hear about here in a little bit to hopefully get that playground refurbished and kind of up to snuff. So I think those are the big things for me right now.
I got an opportunity to do the walkthrough and the rummage sale and bought a couple banners. I had to buy a couple banners. The one I really wanted was
Oh, somebody beat you?
got me a cool little stool.
The doors were unlocked at breakfast, so somebody might have walked away.
I'm sure. But I'm glad it went somewhere because that was a special one for me. Yeah, it sounded like the sale of weight room equipment. I think that was weighing heavily on everybody's mind. I went, and it sounds like the fire department bought quite a bit of it. So that's cool. I think it's awesome that we can do that. I had an opportunity 2 weeks ago to speak at the A4LE, the Association for Learning Environments. That's such a weird name. And so what this was a group of designers, architects, facility managers, and this was, I think this was one of their regional meetings. And so it was from both the public sector and private sector, architects, designers, facility managers from like school systems and private design firms. There was Denver Public Schools had their whole design there. District 49 had folks there. I think there was another one out of Academy 12, I think, had theirs. Plus every major architect in the state of Colorado, up into Wyoming, all at the new Roosevelt High School. And they were looking at what an awesome design it was. And I'm not saying that as somebody who should be biased towards it. I mean, that's what they came for. They've heard so much about this. But apparently, A4LE had a meeting in Long Beach earlier this year, and didn't realize this, but Roosevelt High School was like the star presentation, and so everybody is now wanting to come in and see this building, see how this design, how we've integrated CTE with the traditional classrooms, learning spaces. And so it was really cool. It was humbling to just kind of walk through that group as they were touring the building and hearing some of the little conversations they were having, like, oh my God, why didn't anybody ever think of that before? Or turning to asking like, well, how did you come up with these ideas? Like, I'm just the guy that writes the contracts, right? I'm not the designer, but it was great because I remember a time when Welder I-5J was the laughing stock of the region, and I can tell you right now they're not laughing anymore. They're freaked out. They're excited for us, but they're holding us way up there because of what we're doing with buildings and facilities and programming. It's an exciting time. So that was an awesome opportunity to be a part of. And I got to show off how the learning centers actually work. Because whatever tour we take in there, people say, well, how are you going to use this space? So,
Did you point out the lighting in the field house?
I absolutely did.
Hey,
My favorite part of second favorite part of the building. Culinary arts is my favorite. The solo tubes and the auxiliary gym are my
it is amazing.
And that is all I've got.
Well, if you will indulge a personal moment, I just want to say thank you for how supportive everybody's been for the last few weeks for me and my family. And I want to particularly single out the administration at Milliken Middle and Roosevelt High School, how diligently they worked with me and my kids to get them where they needed to be, get them through the year, support them well. A lot of time and energy went into them. And I'm very, very appreciative of that. And full time, I knew that that's what we would do for anybody. That, who I am and that I sit at this table did not factor into that. It was the right thing to do. So they worked hard and helped us. And I just really appreciate that. And I'm glad to know that that's the level of care and concern our community receives from our district and from our administration. So just a big thank you for everybody for that.
Anything else? I'm waiting for the girls to chime in and they're not here, so. It's boys' night. We'll move on to the report from the superintendent's office.
I have 3 areas I'd like highlighted this meeting. One is our attendance for the year. And then I'd like to talk about a communication professional development we had yesterday for some staff members. And then finally, I want to give you an update on some construction progress we've had. Regarding attendance, we are slowly creeping up with our attendance rate. District average, according to Mr. Ross, who calculated it for me, is at 89%, with Roosevelt High School being at 87, Millikan Middle at 89, MES at 88, Piper at 90, Elwell at 90, and KQA and Civica at 91. Thank you to parents and staff for focusing on attendance and getting kids to school on time and to be there, but also to keep them home when they're sick. And so we're making progress in that area. Yesterday, staff members, building teams of principals and secretaries and district office staff members met in this room with David Gregory and Scott Fuller from G&D Associates to focus on communication, on effective and efficient communication. And I don't think we've ever had a meeting, at least while I've been, where we've had principals and secretaries in the same room at a meeting working together at a district level. And because we know those secretaries run the buildings and run this office here. And so it was good to get together and to find out and learn from from David and Scott as to what we're doing well, and how we can be more efficient, and how we can get better at making sure that we have a wonderful two-way communication. In addition, we had a power team of teachers who are the Family School Community Partnership team throughout the district, and they added so much value to this discussion because they have been working the last 2 years on how to develop our partnerships, and that of course involves communication. I also learned how competitive this group of adults can be, in that we had just a few prizes that for team efforts from some beautiful, very crafted prize buckets that Jessica Diagana had designed, and they will work at like no other in order to achieve an energy drink. So anyway, thank you to the time yesterday, because time is very precious, but it was a great time to begin our discussion. And it was initiated when Jessica, Mrs. Kramer, President Wales, and myself were in a meeting talking about effective communication, webpage update. And so this is the beginning of a new beginning as to how we move forward as a district. So thank you, everybody. Let's talk construction process. How many of you know that our district was one of 4 or 5 districts that were awarded a supplemental BEST grant not too long ago? It's become public, and that the $5,324,719 is awarded as a BEST grant, of which BEST is awarding $3,469,334.52. CFO Everest is appreciative that it's down to the penny. The district is contributing $2,410,893,893,048 for the supplemental grant. As you know, costs have escalated like no other. And in order for us to renovate RMS, getting together with our owner's rep, Answer, and then with Mr. Evers of working on details through this competitive process. What a gift to our community to be able to be awarded another best grant in order how that equals out to all of our community as to the cost and what we're able to provide. So congratulations to the people that worked on it. More importantly, congratulations to the community as to what this means to RMS. And with that, I would like you to mark your calendars for July 19th, 5 p.m. We are going to have a groundbreaking at Roosevelt Middle School in order to, they're working on the insides now, but we will be able to move dirt on July 19th. And so at 5 o'clock, that is a board meeting night. And so that will be in lieu of a work session. So we'll meet there like you've been to, I think, 2 or 3 other groundbreakings. And so there may be a wall down at the time, and there'll be dirt that needs to be moved. We restart TCO, or a temporary certificate of occupancy for New Roosevelt. And people have, facility people, Roosevelt, Sodexo. It has been a furious storm moving stuff so that we can get stuff out of old Roosevelt and into storage or New Roosevelt so that we can perform more work at old Roosevelt. Then MES is coming along. They're on a tight schedule, but when you want to go through there, let me know, and I'd be happy to take you on to see things there. Finally, I think that's, I talked about the groundbreaking, the best grant, New Roosevelt, MES, and you'll notice some different things on the outside. If you see the temporary coverings at our district office, we're working on some water damage issues, so you hopefully will see some new stucco coming up and repairing some of the water damage we have. That concludes the superintendent's report for tonight. Any questions? Anything else you want to know?
I feel bad that I knew there was some training going on. I didn't realize it was the communication training, and I didn't realize what a pivotal piece Jessica had, because I was taking yesterday. Who's in the office? Is it so-and-so in the office? And she was right on it. So
Yes.
I apologize if I pulled you away from. You're probably in the middle of the presentation. You're a multitasker.
She multitasks like no other.
All right. We can move on to our consent agenda. So our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Most of the items under the consent have gone through board review and recommendation. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to members in the public in advance to ensure an extensive and thorough review. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion by Vice President Sassano, a second by Reverend Scott to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Jessica?
Jeremy Scott,
Yes.
Nate Sassano,
Yes.
Michael Bales.
Yes. All right, we'll move into our old business. We have a policy amendment, the addition of JLCDC and the associated regulation.
So President Wales and members of the board, we have not had any questions, concerns, or any revisions that we're bringing forward to this policy. Mrs. Miller is here to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, we're ready to move forward with approval of this this policy and the regulations.
Any questions?
I think all the questions came from Director Proctor last time, so I'm hoping she got her questions answered.
Otherwise,
I think it's important and necessary.
Yeah.
I will move to adopt policy JLCDC. And medically necessary treatment for school settings, and JLCDC-R, authorizing private healthcare specialists to provide medically necessary treatment in schools.
Second.
A motion by Reverend Scott, a second by Vice President Sassano to approve or adopt policy JLDC and the associated regulation. Any other discussion? Jessica, would you please pull forward?
Jeremy Scott,
Yes.
Nate Sassano,
Yes.
Michael Wales.
Yes. All right, move into some special business. Our first item is the Walari 5J JM Master Agreement.
As you know, President Wales and board directors, we have been working the past 5 months, 6 months. It's been a few months. Reviewing some of our items that JMEA has brought forward and that the district wanted to discuss. And you will see in your agenda on the enclosures all of the many things that we were able to accomplish. We have members of the negotiation team here tonight. We have Heather Pate and Amy Seal, co-chair, and Tom Crank, UNICEF Director Zach Johnson, member from the district team, Nate Sassano and Michael Wales and Tammy Creamer and myself, along with guest Michael Evers when it came to talk about the dollars and cents. And I want to thank everybody from the JMEA team, bottom of my heart, for the civility, the humility, the leadership, the positivity, the assertiveness. All of that combined helped us move forward. And I believe with some of our working norms about always think positive intentions that Amy brought up, we have accomplished a lot. It has been, sometimes it felt like we were wading in mud, but we were making progress. And I would like to turn it over to the JMEA team to see if there's anything you want to add, highlight.
I think we just, as a team, want to also express our appreciation to you, especially Karen, as well as Tammy, who's worked above and beyond on many, many committees. And then also it was really exciting for us to have members of the school board as part of the process for the first time. That was a huge benefit. We really appreciate both of you taking the time to participate.
Do you have any questions or things that you want to highlight from the district team?
Is that to them or to us? I just have one quick question. So last couple of times we've done this, been several MOUs, memos of understanding, that have come out of that process to work on for next year. That happened this year. We got through everything.
Are you okay without those MOUs?
I'm just a little concerned that maybe we, forgot something. But I guess I meant that we don't have that we're able to get through it all. It's true. There are no MOUs out of that process for this year.
I'd say that's generally true. There are a few areas that you see in the red lines that say we're going to read some things to make sure that it's working. But there isn't anything that was pushed down
That's what I was
the road in that sense.
kicking the
like
can.
there has been last
Okay.
I
Great.
think one of the significant changes is that we will start this discussion earlier than later so that we don't feel the time crunch. This year, we also met in the evenings, which on one hand, we met during the day, which on hand, it was in a way easier, but it's also harder because teachers gave up some time with students and had to make plans. So trade-off. So we're looking at meeting afternoon, evenings, and during the day next year. And I think we'll continue. The same team, and Mr. Nielsen has been part of the process as well when he could attend and help contribute. And so I think you're off to a great start for 23-24.
We already have 3 meetings scheduled.
Committee meetings?
No. Full group meetings starting September 27th.
But there could be committee meetings, and we know who's in charge of the committee.
Who's the commissar? Or the commandant? I can't remember now.
So I recommend the board approval of the changes to master agreement summary that you will see in your handout. The date changes, the teacher definition that we will start again in September 2023. We've talked about clarity for the leave assistance program that went through many read and renditions. We talked about, went through many of the committees in order to look at planning time, workload, caseload. Something that will be significant next year is using a workload calculator, particularly for students with special needs or that who have an IEP, to see about that workload and how that calculates as to making sure that we have enough staffing for kids and enough planning time teachers. We reviewed the salary schedule, and you'll hear another agenda item of approving the salary schedule with a of $45,000. That was a tough one. We all wanted to give more, and it was tough. We talked also about the special service provider verbiage and are ready for that. And there's that MOU, that kindergarten startness. It is sunsetting as we speak. So, questions? Any questions, clarifications? Then we are ready to move this forward.
Thank you to everybody for the hard work. Everybody worked on this but me, so I was like, good job.
Yeah, I know I had the opportunity, ability to kind of come in and out because my work schedule wouldn't want to be there all the time, and you guys don't have that option. And getting a sub is often more work than just being in school that day. So I appreciate you guys taking that time. It was well worth it, I think, and the same to the district staff. I know it's a lot of time that's involved in this process, but it's a good process. So, we ready?
Hey, well, I was just gonna say, I enjoyed it. I mean, it was a new experience, and that I always like new experiences. I think the wading through mud, there were many days I thought we'd start the day and I knock this. I mean, look, can we get out here by noon? Like, nope. That's good. I mean, it gave us the opportunity to talk through things, think through things, come up with ideas, and ultimately come up with this master agreement that everybody is satisfied with, if not happy with. So, thank you guys. I was having lunch with you today.
You'll find other ways to get queso, don't worry.
We never did have queso though, did we?
There was one day, so I don't think.
Was that the
I
day I was
think you
gone?
missed that day.
Shouldn't have said
We
anything.
were here that.
Well, we can go ahead and I would entertain a motion on this if there's no other discussion.
I'm going to move to approve the master agreement as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Reverend,
No,
motion by Vice
not
President
Reverend,
Sano, a second by Reverend Scott to approve the master agreement as it is presented. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Jessica, would you please poll?
Jeremy Scott,
Yes.
Kate Stefano,
Yes.
Michael Bale.
Yes. All right. Who agrees? We'll move on to our
Social studies.
next item, which is the 6 through 12 social studies curriculum.
And President Hales and members of the board, we have incoming Director of Curriculum Karen Weiser and Middle School Assistant Principal Michael Kurt here to talk about the social studies curriculum review process and a recommendation map. And Mr. Curtis, this is your third meeting here.
Boy, yeah. Where'd it come from?
You know, we need a name tag. We need a nameplate.
Thank you, Superintendent Tressler and President Wales and members of the board. As Ms. Tressler said, I'm here on behalf of the 6 through 12 Social Studies Review Committee, along with Michael Curtis. We met, we've been going through the process of reviewing social studies curriculum for our 6 through 12 grades this last semester. And to begin, our why for doing so, we had a few needs that we needed to address. First and foremost, a couple years ago, the current resources that were being used were phased out due to technology limitations. So they didn't have access to their texts and their materials. So that was fairly urgent. We had some things that they did in the meantime to give us time to kind of look at what we could be doing. And then really it became important that we look at vertically aligning that curriculum, 6 through 12, to allow for that consistency of that scope and sequence, as well as into the Colorado standards, because the previous materials had been adopted a while back, and the standards actually were just revised at the end of 2022. So those were our whys. So we convened a group of teachers. We had 3 teachers from both buildings, so 6 teachers, both Kyle Addington at the high school as an administrative representative and Michael Curtis, and then invited a parent representative as well, and we got 2. Husband and wife team joined us, and they represent students at both the middle school and high school. So we had community and parent representation too to help with that conversation. So like I mentioned, we met multiple times beginning in March, and before we even started reviewing materials, we identified what we were needing for our students. We created a rubric with some key points that we wanted to make sure the materials included and had for both our teachers and our students. Then we selected 5 publishers to review, kind of high level, and then narrowed it down and reviewed 2 final publishers. It wasn't until that point that we invited the publishers in for their pitch. We wanted to dig in first and kind of learn about the materials. We had students, some of our students at both buildings were able to explore the materials, and our teachers. And I even had the opportunity to meet with the entire high school team prior to moving forward, just to get some deeper information or deeper input. They'll, and I'll share this at the end too, but one of the things coming out of this is this will give them the opportunity to review their scope and sequence and offerings as well from this work. So to share our recommendation and ask for approval, I'll let Mr. Curtis speak of it.
Thank you for having me, Superintendent Tressler, and I'm excited to be able to talk a little bit about our process, not just from the middle school lens, but also just the of an administrator and our teachers and how we do. I want to shout out Karen, who did an incredible job unifying a group of teachers who teach from opposite ends of the community, but came together to really make a unified decision here. And they have different ideas, they teach different subject areas, but it was really cool to see Karen just bring us all together and have this stance of, this is what's best for kids. We are making this decision for kids first. It was amazing to see great conversations, and I just thought it was a fantastic job that she did, so I wanted to shout her out. It was great to also hear from parents. They didn't just sit and kind of take it in. They were very involved and asked questions. They were in it with us, so it was awesome to hear that as well. Developing our rubric was a pretty lengthy process, but we wanted to make sure that it fit our needs and it wasn't just a random rubric. We took a few ideas from other places. We looked at what our values are, looked at our community, and made sure that rubric really fit what we needed and what we wanted to teach our students. We made sure it aligned to our Colorado teaching standards, and so it was a lengthy process. Some of the things the middle school did to prepare was we kind of worked on our scope and sequence early on first as well, just so that we had an idea of kind of a vision before we kind of make that step forward. And so lengthy vetting process. We nailed one of our top 2 publishers. We kind of had a bit of a split, but it wasn't a split that was, I love this and I hate that, and vice versa. It was, these are both amazing, and we'd be happy with either one. I'm leaning this way. Everyone kind of had that same voice. I'm leaning on the fence, but I'm leaning. So it was great to hear that we had 2 amazing options to choose from, and we landed on Savas. And so it's our honor and pleasure, I suppose, to request to you that you approve our decision to move with Savas. And I'll let Karen come back to talk a little bit about next steps.
So with your approval, in moving forward, if we're able to move forward with Savas, next steps, just to kind of highlight what we would be doing next. Our teachers and students would have digital access to the materials. A few things to highlight, I want to jump to one thing real quick. Our parent representatives who couldn't be here put together some points that they wanted to share as well about some key highlights. And I didn't have that before I had the materials for the board packet, but I do have some things I wanted to highlight from Lindsay Schmidt. And so they, from their own children's perspective as well as theirs. So from their student, they liked the form. They noticed what it visually appealing, which is very important for our students. And very easy to read through the flow. Many options to understand the material with visual opportunities, writing, and audio tools. So that's from the student perspective. There's a hook and inspire that the students liked. There's literature and pictures. They have full field trips, creative writing, and note-taking tool. And so that was from student perspective that they shared with us from their children. And then as the parents' perspective, they liked that it provided pre-assessments, diversity of styles. They could download without internet if necessary, if there's access challenges. Multiple classroom strategies, and then it does link with Google Classroom as well. So I wanted to share some of those on with them since they couldn't be here. But in moving forward, our students would have digital access as well as our teachers. Each course would have a small set of print text, not a student with text. They have the digital access, but they would have some print materials when needed. Professional development at the beginning of the year for learning how to use the program, as well as district support. And then, like I mentioned early, it really brought the high school team together to realize that they're going to look at their scope and sequence and their course offerings. And in some of those opportunities, not all of them, but bring our middle school team in as well to have those vertical conversations as well. So that's our next steps if we're able to move forward. With that, if you have any questions.
Questions?
I'm just always curious, is the ballpark time and effort, hours spent evaluating?
I think it varies by each teacher too, because most of them dug in. So just because we were meeting each week for an hour and a half, summarizing our conversations and looking, I think they take quite a bit of time to dig in. They had students explore materials. So I don't know that I can identify that, but it was definitely, it was a big undertaking and it was well thought out by those teachers and I think it was very.
Well, I just know that curriculum can be a hot button issues in some other less functional districts and less healthy districts than ours. We're better than a lot of that, but I think sometimes people knew how much time and energy went into it and how thoughtful decision making was. That would help a lot. I'm glad you got parent involvement. That's not always an easy thing to do if it's not like a hot thing. No. But I was glad to see that happened as well. So thank you for all the time and energy.
I think Tom and I dug into it a little bit too. Weren't you sitting next to me? Oh, yeah. I'm assuming that's what all this stuff
is. It is both of our materials. So if you were looking at the white books, those are the ones we move forward with. There's fewer of them because our teachers have them still.
I don't remember which ones we were looking at. There was a really cool picture of the IRS from like the 1950s.
Okay. So I still have them all in there. I didn't carry them in, but I have them all in there. If you do review them. So yes, absolutely. I'm glad you were taking a look. Great. Yeah.
It was well, it wasn't during your presentation, but you were doing like a breather or something like that.
No, it was another time.
I'm excited. I'm always excited when we start talking about the vertical alignment piece. But I also noticed that one of the benefits to this was the cross-curricular piece. Can you guys elaborate on that just a little bit more?
Yep, and I'll let Michael join too if he had to share, but it really focused on bringing in a lot of the English arts ELA standards as well, providing opportunities for students to respond in written, and then various reading opportunities. It even provides supports for our readers, depending on their ability to access content. So it connects those. It also lends itself to project-based learning. So to be able to pull other areas, I can't think of a specific example of some of those, but to be able to do that project-based learning kind of thinking, to be able to pull in some of those other curriculum or content areas into the curriculum and learning.
And what about the financial literacy?
Oh, yes, we should talk about that this morning. And personal financial literacy, actually, interestingly, has been woven into the social studies standards for a while, but it was kind of just within it. But it is now the revision
its own strand within the social studies standards, so that's part of it as well. It has some components of personal financial literacy, so our teachers are able to address those standards intentionally. Yeah.
Cause like, I mean, getting back to what we were talking about with the design of the new high school, you know, a lot of the layout in the room organization is based on that cross-curricular piece. And social studies and language happen to always be the example that comes forward.
Yes.
So, all of that to say, so will language arts then get a little bit of instruction on how to incorporate?
So it's more, from the lens of the social, it's more pulling in those standards into their social studies instruction. So
Okay.
whereas the ELA department will have scope and sequence in their learning targets and essential or evidence outcomes from the standards, this will just allow them to support the ELA teams in those, one of the things is document-based question and inquiry, and then writing written responses. So it'll allow them to support what the students are doing within their ELA classrooms. So the teachers won't necessarily need to know the curriculum content, but they can partner with those things, absolutely.
Okay, good, awesome. Sorry.
No, you're fine. We've all got lots of questions. That's a good thing. So we talked a lot about the process leading up to selecting the curriculum. I think I'm more interested in the process once we've selected how it gets implemented. You talked about that a little bit on your next steps slide here. I think you referenced one session. Is that enough to implement a curriculum like this?
And I'm glad you asked that. That's the start.
Okay.
I don't know. The team, that was what they wanted to start with. And then they'll be able to see kind of what they need. In my role, I'm able to support with that and partner with Savas as well. Benefit to having Savas, they have a regional, I don't know her well, and that's actually, she's moving, but they employ a regional representative to support areas. So when you do need support, you also have that too. We have Savas for our math curriculum at the secondary level. And in fact, our representative came to the middle school towards the end of the year and just did a coaching session with the two of the teachers and myself in digging in deeper because they wanted to know more. So there is that opportunity, but I like that question. There may be needs for more.
Okay.
And that's definitely an area to discuss as they continue.
The committee that reviewed it then, is that all of our social studies teachers at the middle school and high school that were part of the process?
Representatives from middle school, and high school, really representatives from each, but all teachers were included at some point.
Okay.
So during professional development time, we had opportunities for other teachers who weren't a part of the committee to still look into the materials, kind of give their 2 cents. They even filled out the rubric. And so they were able to have a say as well. And so there was, everyone kind of had a voice in some respect.
Okay.
And like I mentioned, with the high school specifically, I did with the entire full team because it is going to impact, not to start, but it's going to get those conversations going. And I wanted to make sure they were all ready for those conversations and kind of get their input if they're ready. So.
Okay. And that's I think the key point. When we've implemented curriculums at other, particularly elementary level, there was heartache because you didn't choose the one I liked, or that kind of thing. So everybody knows what's coming, and I think that's really helpful.
Yes, they know what we're asking for approval of, and we have their support. So.
Yeah. And then you mentioned something that sparked a question. So we have Savas for math, high school, and now we'll have them for social studies at the high school and the middle school. Does the fact that we have them for both provide any benefit?
So it actually does. That was one from the rubric and the conversations, one of the pros in the pro list. Savas uses a platform called Envision. So I also met with Marcia, our SIS coordinator, or SIS administrator as well, to talk about what this would look like for rostering and all of that ahead of time when we were looking at the 2. But because we have a relationship already with rostering, that's already established. The platform, our 6th through 12th grade students will already be familiar with the Envision platform through their math courses. So they'll have that. There is our geography piece, because geography is done differently throughout the country. So geography is actually on a slightly different platform, which was another reason I met with the social studies team to let them know, this course is going to be on a different space, and they understand that, and they're okay with that. Other than that little caveat, little separate piece, it's all on Envision. So there is a benefit because our students will already be familiar with how to get to Envision. But instead of clicking math, they'll click their social studies text.
you guys
And she
thought
was
that?
able to negotiate very well with them. So another plus for Mrs. Weiser.
Like that. Good,
What
thank
does
you.
that mean?
That means, she said, well, I don't know how much savings, but
Yeah, I don't know how much, but I mean, I was able to get from the initial quote to another, a final, better quote.
nice job.
Well, again, I just
Bring her
want
into the negotiation. mix.
That's where I learned it, you're saying.
Well, again, I just want to say thank you for your hard work. I mean, so many times when we're approving curriculum, it's things that I'm not an expert in this. But so what gives me confidence in the decision that we have to make is all the hard work and energy that you put in. So while
And it was the team, so it was. Yeah.
absolutely, so I definitely want to credit your team, but I think sometimes maybe coming to this step might seem a bit procedural, but it only can be that way because you all did your job. And did the hard work, and so I can sit here and have confidence in the work that you did, because that's what I have confidence in, because I'm not a social studies teacher, and you wouldn't want me to be. But I really appreciate the hard work.
Is this the only new curriculum we're implementing next year? Right, it's a little different at the middle school and high school level because not every teacher is teaching the same curriculum like they are elementary, but is this the only new one we're looking at
Yes,
this year? Okay.
for this year, yeah.
All right, any other questions? Any other presentation points?
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for being with us. Gentlemen, how would you like to proceed?
Going to be approved the recommendation of the Sabas Social Studies curriculum for grades 6 through 12.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice President Sassano, a second by Reverend Scott to approve the Sabas Social Studies curriculum. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Jessica, would you please?
Jeremy Scott,
Yes.
Nate Fasano.
Yes.
Michael Wales.
Yes. All right, we will move on to our next item, which is the salary schedules for the 23-24 school year.
And this is part of our process with JMEA with certified salary schedule, which we then build with our other salary schedules. And you will see this proposal under special business. And earlier I shared that it's based on raising our salary base to $45,000, and then Mr. Everest and the business team then finalized all of these salary schedules that bring forward to you at this time.
All right. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I was curious, so I was just looking it up, and I will caveat this by saying we're still way out of what we ought to be paying. I mean,
I would agree with that.
we are so, out of whack. Yeah. That said, I did go back and look, and when I started on the board in 2018, the base rate was 36.8. So to make that much progress in 4 years ain't nothing. It's not enough. I think we have to give a very rare thank you to the state legislature for helping us out in that regard and giving us some tools to work with. But I think being able to do this much and then also adding the 13.5 FTEs we're planning to add, which will no doubt help our teachers as well, additional support services. Again, it's not enough, but I'm glad we can do it.
I think this year we found, I don't even know if the right word is balance, by adding some staff that we desperately needed, that then challenges us to also raise what we have for budget in order to get as high as we can. And so salary wise, it was a tough one this year.
Problem with budget, it literally is a zero-sum game. It's one of those things where, unfortunately, but I want to thank you guys too for all your hard work and willingness to work with everybody. So I know it was not everybody got everything they want, but I think I feel good about where we got to. I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve the salary schedules for the 2024 school year as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Reverend, second by Vice President Sassano to approve the salary schedules. Any other discussion?
Well, I've said this before. I always feel a little weird voting on salary stuff because it directly affects my household. But I accuse myself tonight, we can't approve it. So, just stating that, putting it on the record.
Well, and I'm in the same boat, and I would say the one the one dark mark on this is when I look at the classified schedule. Of course, I have a classified employee in my household. When I look at the classified schedule, the individuals who have the most direct student contact are the lowest paid of all of our employees, including what's on the classified schedule. And I really hope that we can, in future coming years, we can start looking at that, because I know there's a lot of turnover in that case, and gosh darn it, I wonder if it has anything to do with what they're getting paid. Could. Any other discussion?
Well, I don't have a horse in the race in my household, but I can tell you it's still, you should probably just vote yes.
Jessica, would you go forward?
Jeremy Scott,
Yes.
Nate Sisano,
Yes.
Michael Whale.
Yes. All right, we will move on to our next item, which is the Board of Education 23 meetings, or 24 meeting schedules.
And Jessica helped us put this together this coming year, beginning July 19th. You will notice that there are times during the calendar year that you don't meet that first week in July, because of the 4th of July and because we've approved the budget in June. So this month, or for 2023, I am recommending that your first meeting July 19th, and then you will return to the 2 meetings per month. And then you'll also see that beginning September 6th is when you will take field trips for board meetings in each building, beginning at Milliken Middle, then Pioneer Ridge, Elwell, Milliken Elementary, and then finally Roosevelt, KQ, and Civica. Once in a while, we need to add a meeting in December, depending on when we get the finance information we need. But other than that, I think this is ready to bring forward for your vote. Any questions?
I do have a couple questions. One is, so on the 19th, we're going to be at a groundbreaking. Let's skip
At 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock.
That'll be your work session.
Will there be any facility there for us to have a meeting at that building?
Maybe in a tent.
Okay.
You could, are you talking about trying to have the meeting there, or because of timing and location? Because you could easily have the meeting at Elwell.
And that was going to be another one of my ideas, if we needed to have it at Elwell.
Rather than trying to skid out all the way back.
Right.
The past groundbreakings have been about 45 minutes,
Right.
but it's getting out of the parking lot. I think it was a little bit bigger at Roosevelt. I wasn't at Elwell. What are your thoughts? We thought about we could move it to your groundbreaking earlier at 4:30, but then we're wondering about people getting off work.
It's at 5.
No, I'm okay with the time at 5. I'm just again, more concerned about summertime groundbreaking. People may show up. It could turn into a long, let's
You
chit
could
chat. Let's
invite
talk.
them to a meeting.
I know.
A board meeting. Fill the chairs.
If it were all possible to have a meeting there at the school, that would be ideal, but I understand that we may not be able to.
There
do
will
that.
be a construction trailer there. We have had meetings at the construction trailers.
Never heard that
Yeah,
song.
yeah, bomb.
So, I will turn it over to incoming superintendent.
So work on that.
Pass that buck.
Oh, that'll be his first
Are
meeting
you
too.
already heading
Yeah.
down the river? Is that what's happening here?
You might be home by that time. I think I am on the river that day.
So the other one I have a little concern with is we have a pretty big one this year, is making sure that we're planning adequately for the reorganization meeting. So we don't have what happened
Oh,
2 years
yes.
ago. So I almost wonder if,
November 15th, we stay,
well, I think we can keep that meeting. I'm wondering if we don't just keep it in our minds that we may need a special meeting between the 15th and the 6th.
mhm.
It would definitely be closer to the 15th, so we can do the reorganization. We'll have to do reorganization.
Depending on when we start counting the 10 days, I mean, you could already be at 8 when you hit 15th. So unless you're gonna do it like that Friday.
Right, and that's what I say, I mean, we very rarely has it come in before that 15th meeting. And it usually falls, the deadline usually falls between that 15th and that last meeting in November and that first meeting in
Yeah.
December.
Thanksgiving in between there.
I feel like we're at it here, but I think everybody, we need to know that we're probably gonna have to have a special meeting.
Maybe like the 29th.
So election day is November 7th, and then our board meeting is November 15th. Will they have it finalized? No?
Very,
Okay.
very
Then you will have
delicate.
to have a meeting before the 6th.
Because it's 10 days from they certify, right?
20.
20.
Right? Yeah.
I think it's 10.
No, I think it's 20 because we were at 18 when I discovered it last years ago.
Well, I think either way.
They give you a little bit of time, but it's not a lot. I don't.
Well, I mean, want to just go ahead and plan for one on the 20th then, because that would be within that window the week before. And that's the week after Thanksgiving.
I'm fine with that. I just brought it up now because
I was the same thing, because I was just doing the math in my head.
Yeah, I'd like to at least have somebody else besides myself on mine that we're probably gonna have to have a special meeting between those two.
Yeah, especially, I guess we can just pencil it in, but a special, like, just for realization, swearing in and all that, yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, looks good to me.
Michael, you're gonna need that second meeting in December, aren't you?
It kind of depends if I remember the proposition designation, but if that passes, that actually, because that cascades a whole bunch of changes for the assessor's office, it actually pushes everything back. And I believe the date that we have to have things certified is the January.
Okay.
So if that passes, then we'll get more time.
Okay.
Ready?
I'm ready.
I'm gonna move over the school board meeting dates for the calendar year 23-24 as presented.
I'll second. So a motion by Vice President Sassano, second by Mike to approve the 2023-24 Board of Education meeting schedule. Any discussion? Jessica, would you please poll the board?
Jeremy Scott,
Yes.
Nate Fasano,
Yes.
Michael Wales.
Let's move into some new business.
And the policy amendment, JKA policies. Mrs. Miller's here today to answer any questions regarding the restraint and seclusion amendments that are needed. So, Mrs. Miller, any highlights that you want to share?
Sure. Thank you, members of the board. We need to revise this policy to be in compliance with Colorado regulations. Previously, the regulation was to have 5 minutes, and then individuals would have to report when there was use of a hold or restraint. Now it is 1 minute or less. Anything needs to be reported essentially. Luckily, our staff, we have always practiced that if a hold or restraint is being done, that you voluntarily not pay for it every single time. So this won't change our practices. We just need to update the policy. Any questions?
Weird, the things we have to have policy around, but we do. It's good.
Agreed.
Hope we don't have to use it.
I guess I'm confused, and I know this isn't a question for you, but why we have to change it. It says holding of a student for less than minutes. Now we're changing it to less than 1 minute. Isn't that the same thing? Less than 5 minutes, less than 1 minute. It's always the same.
Anything, it was 4 minutes and 59 seconds. Anything over that, we had to report
I see.
previously. Now it's anything
Over a minute.
over that mark.
I'm glad we're always reporting it. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's, yes.
Okay, well, this is the first reading, so it'll be available for the next 2 weeks anyway, for review.
And then our last agenda item deals with our budget the proposed budget. And you heard all the details from Mr. Evers during our work session. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mr.
Good evening, President Wales, members of the Board of Education, and Superintendent Trustler. Tonight, I would like to go over our proposed budget for the 23-24 school year. Starting off with our general fund revenue overview, we are projecting that total general fund revenue will be just over $48 million this year. And then subtracted from that will be transfers to district charter schools at $6.9 million, transfer to insurance reserve fund, $976,000, and transfer to capital reserve fund of $933,000. Gives us a net general fund revenue of $39.2 million. Our funded pupil count for next year, we are projecting a funded pupil count of 3,822.5 students. This assumes growth of 9 students in our core district to 3,202.5. Assumes growth of 11 students for Knowledge Quest Academy to 410 students. And assumes growth 61 students for Civica for 210. For total growth in the district of 91 students. And then please note that our funded pupil count for this coming year and going forward will no longer include any preschool students. So regular education preschool students, special education preschool students, those are all being paid from a separate revenue stream from the Colorado Department of Early Childhood. So those are no longer in our CDE funded pupil count. Our total program funding for next year, our projected pupil funded rate, per pupil funded rate from CDE is $10,034.13. You multiply that by the number of students that we are projecting, 3,822.5, and you get total program funding next year of $38.3 million. And then dividing that between the 3 organizations within our district, the core district, we'll see 32.1 million, Quest Academy 4.1 million, and Civica 2.1 million. Overview of general fund expenditures. Our projected general fund expenditures for next year are 41.5 million. This is an increase of 573,000 over our January supplemental budget. The principal driver of these changes, first off, are the successfully concluded negotiations with JMEA, where the base certified salary scale amount has been increased to $45,000. That is an increase of 8.434% for next year. The additional granting of a step for certain staff is an additional 2.25% increase. And the total salary increase for next year will be approximately 10.683%. All employee groups will receive the same increase for next year. And then the total district salary increase for next year, or increase in costs for next year is 2.8 million. And of that number, 2.3 million is direct salary increase, and 526,000 is the subsequent increase in benefits from that. We are increasing FTE by 13.5. primarily in our special education and general education areas. And another, this is more kind of an accounting change. We are moving the district's grants out of general and into a special revenue grants fund next year. The primary reason for that is just simply to separate grant funding, which tends to be limited in duration, our general fund, which tends to be more recurring. So looking at a projected ending general fund balance for next year, we'll have 1.2 million in Tabor Reserve, 222,000 in long-term cracks, 130,000 in non-spendable fund balance. And as discussed previously, non-spendable fund balance are basically for us our prepaid expenditures, expenditures that happen this year, but for accounting reasons need to be accounted for subsequent year. So that tends to be around 130,000 for the district. Our Board of Education reserved fund balance, 2.5 million. And then our assigned fund balance is 353,000, which will leave us with a projected ending general fund balance of $4,524,328. So that's the overview for the general fund. Now we'll look at each remaining individual funds within the district. And we'll start off with our insurance reserve fund. The revenue for this fund was increased by 435,000 and expenditures increased by 385,000 over our 22-23 supplemental budget. Increase is primarily due to the necessity to begin insuring the new Roosevelt High School. That's much more expensive than that's a much more expensive building than our current Roosevelt High School. So we need to begin having more insurance coverage to be able to cover that. And then also a use in our workers' compensation costs. And our insurance reserve fund has a $100,000 contingency budgeted in it. Moving on to our food service fund, we are projecting a budgeted revenue increase of 558,000 and an expenditure increase of 303,000 over the 22-23 supplemental budget. Revenue and expenditure increase is coming from the adoption of the Colorado Healthy School Meals for All program that will begin next year. And that program will provide a free standard lunch and breakfast for any student that wants it. It only covers the reimbursable meal. It doesn't cover things like seconds or a la carte items, things of that nature. Just the reimbursable is covered under this program. We are projecting a significant increase in both, our revenue that will be generated in our food service and the expenditures that we'll need to spend, just increase participation in the program that we're expecting. And then our food service fund has a $300,000 contingency budgeted in it. Moving on to our new grants fund. We're budgeting the revenue and expenditures for the grants fund at almost $3 for next year. And again, separating out the district's grants into a grants fund will help just in tracking and just isolating the kind of the up and down changes that occur as the district receives grants and its grants sunset away, to keep that separate from our general fund revenue, which tends to be much more recurring revenue. And grants fund does not have contingency budgeted for it. Student activities fund. I have set the budget for student activities at 1.2 million for revenue and expenditures for next year. As we talked about in the work session, when I started, the student activities fund was budgeted at around 700,000 for revenue and expenditures, and just as we come out of COVID. There's been more activities, there's been more fundraising, there's more activities. The 1.2 million seems to be a reasonable estimate for the trend for next year. Bond redemption fund. This fund accounts for the district's the financing of our building projects, so the principal and interest payments that are paid each year to the holders of the district's general obligation. And the funding, the revenue expenditures for this fund are essentially set by what was passed by the voters, and then what the repayment schedules dictate for our debt. So this is going to remain fairly constant year over year. And this fund has a $5,000 contingency budgeted with it. Our building fund. This is the fund that our bond proceeds were originally deposited into, and this is where the cash to build our buildings and to renovate our buildings comes from. So the budgeted revenue for the fund is primarily from the BEST program grant revenue and interest earned on our cash holdings in the fund. And these expenditures are based on information provided by our owner's representative and have a $5 million contingency budgeted in this fund. But not least is our capital reserve fund. The district revenue transfer decrease provides some relief for general fund for this year. Our expenditure budget decreased by a net of about $52,000. Of that, primarily is a slowdown in the transportation equipment plan for the 22-23 school year. Also, our district technology refresh lease payment is budgeted to come out of this fund for next year. And this fund has a $200,000 contingency budgeted for that. This concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions since the work session?
Yeah, I asked all my questions an hour ago.
No,
So.
I always really appreciate the work sessions and the kind of time to dig in and all of that. That's really valuable. So no, I think you did a good job, and I know it was hard to come up with something. That was part of the tension and being able to authorize the salary schedule we just authorized. You know, we gave till it hurts, and there's a complete budget where you can tell where it hurts a little bit, but that's okay. But you did a good job. You and your team did a good job, Mr. Everett, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve the Weld RE5J proposed budget.
We have to let that has to go to the next meeting. Yep. Because of
Sit out there and have
public,
Oh, that's
in
right.
case there's public opinion.
I forgot.
Nice try, though.
I did. I wanted to get it done.
All right. Any other discussion? Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Team. Do we have any citizen comments on general topics?
No, we do not.
Okay. Any other items deemed necessary by you guys? All right. It is 8:13. We'll